بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We would like to warmly welcome you all on our Lantern of Light YouTube Live with me, your host, Sakeena Habib. We from Lantern of Light would like to extend our heartfelt condolences to you all on the martyrdom, shahadat days of our first Imam, Imam Ali alayhi salam, Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And on these nights of Laylatul Qadr, please let us all remember each other in our lofty prayers. And inshallah, we hope that Shahar Ramadan is going well for each one of you. So, inshallah, we will be continuing with our mental health well-being podcast program today as well, with a very interesting topic of generational trauma. If you recall from our previous podcast that we had Sister Sarah Gulamhusein, who had discussed about blame game part 2. I hope that all of you enjoyed that discussion. Related to that topic, we will be now delving into generational trauma, inshallah. A very brief introduction about Sister Sarah Gulamhusein, that she's a psychologist and a trauma therapist who founded a mental health and human rights platform by the name of Tsazesh. You can find her on Instagram by the Insta handle of Tsazesh, Tsazesh. Her current campaign involves understanding children's rights and development, and also she deals with several clients in helping them understand and navigate their emotions, trauma, and mental health. I would just like to urge all our viewers here who have tuned in to please make sure that you help us in contributing towards these amazing podcasts that we are having related to mental health. As you know, that mental health is an integral part of our lives, and even Islam tells us to really take care of our spiritual as well as our mental health well-being. As you can see, we've got all the information displayed on the screen. You've got the QR scan code where you can donate. The donation link is also available in the comment section below, in the description bar. And you can always donate on the link, which is also available on our Instagram page and in our bios. So please make sure to help us, because there are a lot of brothers and sisters who are struggling financially to take advantage of these amazing mental health well-being podcasts. And alhamdulillah, we're trying our level best at Lantern of Light to provide these amazing opportunities globally for people to benefit from. Now, as we would move on, I have a couple of questions to ask all of you, right? So are you someone who's been through generational trauma? Or are you like a survivor trying to break the generational trauma cycle that has affected you for a very long time? Now, generational trauma can have multiple definitions, by the way. So some people completely victimize themselves on petty issues, saying they've been through it. But we need to clearly understand in what range of generational trauma are we truly standing in to defend ourselves at times. Now, for example, if you've been through traumatic events like, say, car accidents that can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, right? So then this can, for parents, right, this can may or may not affect their ability to connect with their children and influence their coping mechanisms. Now, another example, which is a common one, is where research indicates that individuals who have experienced abuse, it can be in the form of physical, sexual, mental abuse, verbal abuse, are more likely to perpetuate this cycle, leading to intergenerational trauma. And then you've got another category, which is of, they say, genocide trauma. So descendants of, for example, descendants of survivors of events like the Holocaust may experience higher rates of mental health issues due to the trauma passed down through generations, right? So these are, some basic categories. But of course, I am not an expert. I wouldn't know much about it. So why not ask the expert, Sister Sarah Gulamhusein, more about this? I would like to welcome Sister Sarah Gulamhusein on board, and inshallah, let's get started with our discussion. Assalamu alaikum. How are you,
Walaikum
Sister
salam.
Sarah? Inshallah.
I'm good,
Inshallah, you're keeping
alhamdulillah.
well. First of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt condolences to you on these big nights, the Shahadat nights. Adamallahu ujurana wa ujurakum. And thank you so much for taking out your precious time despite these busy nights. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fulfill all your hajats, inshallah. Hoping you're well.
Ameen, Ameen. And to you as well, condolences. And thank you, for inviting me on and giving me a platform to kind of share and talk about important topics. Alhamdulillah.
Absolutely. I think this one would be my favorite of all. Like this, tops of the list. Okay, we've got a whole list, but this one I think tops it off. So let's get to know the first one. So, Sister Sarah, what is generational trauma and why is it important to know about it?
So I think you've defined it very aptly. You may not be an expert, but you understand generational trauma, so that was very good. I'll just add a
Okay.
few points onto your definition. So, yes, there are many categories of generational trauma, and different things can cause it. But essentially, it's just a cycle of trauma that's kind of, transferred from one generation to another, right? So
Okay.
it can be a generation within a community, it can be a generation within a family, it can be both. But as long as it's being passed on from parents to children to parents to children, right? So
Right.
that's the cycle you're moving through generations. And it actually has more to do with culture than genes. Right. So, as you
Mm,
said, a car accident, not really to do with culture, but car accident can cause generational trauma. A culture of suppression and abuse. I know we've talked about this before. We're very passionate about this area. That can
right.
also lead to generational trauma. Why? Because you're perpetrating your culture. You're making sure that your culture is carried down, through generations. But some
Right.
areas of culture are not very healthy, like when you're told to, suppress your emotions, silence yourself, avoid conflict, or avoid kind of sharing your opinions, stuff like that.
Mm,
Um, it's very specific generational trauma because it only applies to if you have directly witnessed it or if you've
right.
directly experienced it, right? So you have to either experience it or witness it. That's why things like genocide and what we're seeing in Gaza right now, that's going to affect people for generations to come,
Right.
right?
That is
So
so
that's
sad.
also,
Yes.
I know that's a form of generational trauma. We remember these people who are suffering in Gaza, in Yemen, in all over the world. I think we remember them on this night. And inshallah, we pray for Allah
Inshallah.
to make it easy for them and to make their resistance rewarded, I guess.
Inshallah. I mean, yes.
I mean,
Absolutely.
um,
So, Sister Sarah, yes, you were saying, sorry,
yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say that those are forms of generational trauma.
generation
And
trauma.
there's a reason that it's important. As you rightly said, it affects your mental health, it also affects
Hmm.
your physical health. So there's a
Right.
study that I was reading a while back, and it said that people who experience generational trauma, any kind of generational trauma, they're more likely to experience this long list that I've written down here is anxiety, depression, chronic pain, panic attacks. They're more likely to have a kind of disorder, so like addiction or substance abuse disorders or eating disorders. They definitely experience something called PTSD, right, which is post traumatic stress disorder, as you mentioned. They experience insomnia, low self-esteem or issues with your self-identity, so like identity crisis, anger issues, and loads of fear, so like fear of death, fear of people, paranoia. There's also something called agoraphobia, which is fear of going into social situations, going outside your home, difficulty trusting people. And I think the most important is they all experience something called hypervigilance. Now, hypervigilance, if you haven't heard what that is, it's a symptom of trauma. It's when you are vigilant, you're always on edge because you're scared that what you've experienced or what you've witnessed is going to happen again. So you're constantly looking over your shoulders. If there's like, if someone suddenly comes behind you and scares you, you can get triggered,
Okay.
you know. Um, if you hear a sound, you can kind of get scared. You're like, what is that sound? Mostly people experience it in their sleep. They're very hyper vigilant, even in a sleeping state. So any small noise can wake you up, and then you get angry. You're like, oh, it was nothing. You ruined my sleep, stuff like that. So that's called hypervigilance. And it's a symptom of trauma. Every single person who experiences generational trauma or any kind of trauma is usually hypervigilant, and it really affects your life. So it's very
Yeah.
important to know about generational trauma.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. I just want to add a little point in terms of hypervigilance. I mean, as you described it right now, so um, if an incident, for example, takes place, and it had a bad effect on you and your family, and it was a very traumatic incident for everybody at home. Now, when that month, has, for example, it's a new year, but now that month has come back. For example, that incident happened in the month of Ramadan, and now this Shahar
Mm,
Ramadan has started, and now, you're scared, oh, that thing might happen again. And so, for example, I'm just giving an example. Now, this person is avoiding to meet people or go outside because of this incident that took place last year, and is just trying to be in, and doesn't want to socialize. Like, it's
yeah.
those effects that take over control over this person. So yeah, it's really okay. So what are the signs of generational trauma, Sister Sarah? I just want to quickly move on to that.
So these essentially are the signs then. We have hypervigilance, we have anger issues and irritability, we have um, low self-esteem because you're unsure about yourself, you're unsure about people, especially if your trauma is, to do with another person. You've got a lot of anxiety, you're scared. There's a lot of fear because if you've been through this before, you can go through it again, right? So
Yeah.
there's that fear. And then there's also, because you're feeling so many things, you're more likely to just shut it down, right? You're like, no, I don't want to feel anymore. So you go through something called depression. You also can have sleeping issues, nightmares is very common in people who have trauma. Either they're not sleeping well at all, or they're sleeping and it's very disturbed sleep. There's nightmares, they're talking in their sleep, or sometimes I've had clients that scream in their sleep and they don't know until they wake up, someone tells them you were screaming, right?
Mhm.
So it's very disturbed sleep. And then also spiritually, so we need to look at the spiritual symptoms, which is fear of Allah, fear of punishment. Am I being punished? Is that why I went through this? Because I'm a bad person? And then also fear, no, not fear, lack of hope, right? So there's lack of hope because if you've been through, like, for example, you've been through something like abuse, right, consistently over a long period of time, you lose hope because you're like, there's no one who's coming to save me, right? You've probably asked Allah for help so many times and you've noticed that something hasn't happened or you haven't come out of the situation. So there's that. It's so easy to lose that hope if you let, like, your negative thoughts kind of fill your mind. You start overthinking and that impacts your relationship with Allah. So there are a lot of spiritual symptoms as well. One important one that I'm just remembering right now is I had a client who went through generational trauma and stopped going to the mosque completely. Said the mosque is not helping me. That's where they experienced it. So they're like, not helping me. I'm not getting any closer to Allah, whether I'm in the mosque or I'm at home. So that relationship with going to the mosque, building relationship with the community, all of that kind of went away because of that particular instance of trauma. Um, So it can affect you spiritually, it can also affect your mental health.
It's pretty sad sometimes because,
Yeah,
instead of sort of helping these people, trying to build that communication circle, they are sort of put off. But it's because of their generational trauma, as you said, and sometimes we ourselves don't know like what solutions to look for, like what can really help me. As you gave the example of this woman client, like she's trying her best to come out of it, but then she feels like, the mosque is not the right environment, or even being at home makes her feel more isolated. So, what can a
definitely.
person then, do in such situations? Like, where can that person find that hope or that motivation to come out of, such a scenario?
It's not easy, and even breaking the cycle is more difficult.
Yeah.
But there are avenues of support. There are definitely avenues of support. And the first thing was that she found a counselor. And that
Okay.
really helped, because sometimes you're going through something but you don't understand that you're going through it, or you don't know how far into your life it's reached, right? You
Right.
won't realize it until things get so bad, and that's also not healthy. So I would say, if you've noticed something, you've noticed these symptoms, you've noticed that you're not yourself, you feel really unsettled, you need to talk to someone who is a professional in this area. So speak to a
Mm.
counselor, speak to a therapist, a trauma specialist, and just understand, be more aware of what you've gone through and how it's affected you, because it's
Right.
only when you understand things that you can start solving them, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And lean on someone. I know it's easier said than done, because it's not easy to trust people, especially today, but there's always someone you can find, or someone Allah puts in your life. It's just about opening up and trusting them, right? It doesn't have to be a family member, it doesn't have to be a friend. It can be someone who you regularly meet, someone you can see is like a person you can trust, or you have reason to believe you can trust them, right? So
Right.
do that, because you can't shoulder everything. Just it becomes a heavy burden. It really becomes a
Burden. Very
heavy
true.
burden, you know
Right.
so open up to someone and talk to them. They don't have to do anything for you, but as long as they're there, they're giving you comfort and support. That's, it can really take that burden and reduce it by half, right?
Absolutely. You're
And then
right.
the other thing that I am a strong advocate for is express your emotions. You're clearly going through an emotional period, right? Trauma is very
Right.
emotional. It's connected very
Yeah.
deeply to your right brain, your emotional brain. So experience your emotions, express your emotions, non-judgmentally. You don't need to judge yourself for crying for days, or locking yourself up, or eating a lot of comfort food. you know don't judge yourself for doing that, because sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need those days where you're just not doing anything, and just reflecting, just thinking about your emotions. Journaling really helps, noting down what emotion am I feeling, and why am I feeling this emotion. Chances are you'll really understand a lot about yourself when you write it down, right? Or
Right.
when you say it out
Right.
loud, because you're taking responsibility for what you're experiencing. If you don't
Right.
say it,
Exactly.
you're just like, it's like you're trying to avoid it, right? So
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
say it or write it. If you can't say it, write it down. And that means your brain is automatically acknowledging that I've taken responsibility for this. I am feeling this. I'm experiencing this. And the next step is, what do I do about it? Right? Where do I go
Right.
from here?
So it's a good way to write it down in a journal, speak it out rather than giving yourself that silent treatment and suppressing
Yes.
your
Oh my
feelings.
God. I can talk for so long about silent treatment. I think I've got something in my notes as well. I might mention it today.
Okay. So, Sister Sarah, I was reading somewhere that generational trauma is often linked to ACEs, like in initials, caps lock, ACEs. What are
Mhm.
these? Can you explain, please?
Yeah, so ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And just as we mentioned before, a lot of generational trauma is experienced in childhood, right?
Right.
Why? Very simply because that's when children learn about the world, right? When you're growing up is when you learn about the world, and the people around you, like your teachers, your parents, your cousins, any people that you come across in the community, you're learning from them. You observe them and you learn from them. So if there is any generational trauma, it's picked up from there, right? We say children are like sponges, and they really are,
Yes.
because they can easily pick up these things, right?
Anything, literally.
Anything, and they will mirror you, because so we're human beings, right? So we're bound to mirror the other person. So if a child picks these things up, they're going to say it, or they're going to act it, right? And
Absolutely.
that can become a part of their life. So the the reason ACEs are so important is because generational trauma, the most common form of it, as you mentioned earlier in the beginning of this podcast, was domestic abuse and domestic violence, right? That's the most common form of generational trauma, and it's mostly experienced in the home when the child is growing up. And
Mhm.
we see a lot of that, things like abuse,
So,
even neglect. Sorry?
sorry, I think I just got a slight glitch, and that's why I couldn't catch up. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, all right. So I was just saying things like abuse and neglect, things like violence, toxic stress, all of these things that a child experiences when they're young is linked to generational trauma, and it can really manifest itself when you're growing up. So when the child grows up, there was a study that showed the link between generational trauma and physical health problems. So children who've experienced abuse and
Yes.
neglect in their childhood, they were 3 times more likely to experience things like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, suicide, severe obesity, one more thing, cancer, right? So they were more likely to experience these physical health issues when they
Oh
grew
my
up.
God.
And because of that generational trauma, because you
Wow.
hold it in
That's
your body. Yeah, it's really shocking. It's really, really shocking.
mm,
And it's a lot of the times these things can't be
yeah,
explained. Like, for example, if you don't have, the say if you don't have diabetes in the family, but then one person gets diabetes, and you really think, where
exactly.
has they been eating like a lot of sugar? Like, what's happening? Generational trauma is a big, big,
Exactly.
big cause of it. So yeah.
Wow. Nobody could have thought about this. I mean, it doesn't, of course, scientifically it might be proven, I'm not sure, but for us, like generally to think about it, it doesn't make sense, right? Like how?
Yeah, it's because the trauma is carried in your body. Okay, so there's something, if you're
I
aware of
see.
psychology, there's something called conversion disorder. Conversion disorder is a person who, a lot of people have it. It's when a person who feels emotions or experiences like mental health issues, and it gets converted to physical health issues, right? Like, for example, if you have so much anxiety and you experience body pains at the same time, the body pain
Yeah.
is a conversion disorder. It's more likely that your anxiety has been converted into body pain. I had this one
My
client
God.
who experienced a lot of anxiety and had a lot of like body issues. And they went to the doctor to try and find out, okay, why am I getting this, body pain? Why am I getting like abdominal pain, back pain? Like, is there something wrong with me? All the tests came clean. There was nothing wrong with this person. The doctor said, I think you need to see a psychologist because there's nothing wrong with you. It was the
Oh my
anxiety
God.
that was causing stomach issues, was causing issues in the back, was causing like lots of fever all the time, no infection. This person had no infection, but they had these three symptoms.
I'm just I don't know. I'm flabbergasted. I don't know how to react. I'm so speechless because we
Yeah.
don't know about these things. You know, we like nobody ever tells us that these are the consequences behind something small. Like people think, oh, generational trauma. What is it? Like it's something small. You know, get
Mhm.
out of it. Just overcome through it. You know, get over it. Right? Don't be too sensitive about it. But look at the kind of impact that it can have on your physical health, on your spiritual health, on your mental health, well-being. I mean, I wish people took these things seriously and understood instead of, you know, blaming the person for, you know, expressing their feelings or expressing
Yeah.
about their pain. You see how we sometimes just tell someone off, like, you know, you're just overreacting. It's nothing.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one way you shouldn't give support. If anyone comes to you telling you that they're experiencing pain, if they keep, especially those people who keep complaining, I'm
Yeah.
sure we all know that one person who keeps complaining, chances are they're going through something. You don't understand what they're
Something.
going through. The only
True.
way they know how to express themselves is complaining. I'm not saying complaining
Yeah.
is a good thing. It's not healthy to complain, by the way. But there's a reason that person is also doing that. So we have to really
Exactly.
think, why are they doing that? What kind of support can I give? You know?
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sister Sarah, would you mind sharing some case studies on this? Perhaps maybe just one or two, if you
Yes,
may
yes. So
like.
I do have some case studies. But before I go into them, I want to kind of share this vicious cycle, so you know what to look for. When I'm talking about the case studies, you'll know what to look for. So this vicious cycle that we're talking about, I'll give the example of say a parent who abuses a child. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the vicious cycle is when the parent abuses the child, chances are, and this is very high chances, that the parent has been abused in their childhood and they're abusing their child, and their child is probably going to abuse their child. Right? So that's the cycle of trauma. You can see,
Cycle
like, it goes from parent to child, parent to child.
to parents.
Right? So, example, when a mother, say, punishes a child, right? So just so you can understand, I'm giving an example. When a mother punishes a child, let's say the child's done something wrong, the mother punishes them by saying, okay, you've got a timeout, you go to your room and you stay there, right? Or go to the corner and stand there, right? You have a timeout. The mother thinks she's disciplining the child, but what's happening with the child? The child starts believing that I've done something wrong. That's why I'm being punished,
Mm.
right? So not only is the child feeling guilty because they probably made a mistake or something, so they're feeling guilty, and now they're feeling scared because their mom is punishing them, and then
Yeah.
they start feeling that they realize that when I make a mistake, I need to be punished. I have to have a timeout, right? So when they
Yeah.
grow up, the child takes this traumatic experience, and I'm calling it a traumatic experience because it's impacting the child. It has traumatized the child. Okay? So the
Mm-hmm.
child grows up and starts believing that they, one, can't make mistakes. Because every time they make a mistake, they need to be punished. And if there's nobody to
Trauma.
punish them, sometimes, when you adults grow up, there's no one to punish them. When there's nobody to punish them, they start punishing themselves. They start engaging in self harm or self sabotage, right?
Right.
And that kind of perpetuates the cycle. So when they get their own children, they're most likely going to do the same thing that their mom did to them. So just so you can
Right.
get a clear picture, this is called generational trauma. It's such a small thing, but it can lead to that generational harm and trauma. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the case study then. So I
Mm.
had I'm not going to mention any details so you don't know who
Yes,
they
of
are, but
course. It's
um
confidential. Yeah.
I had a daughter who came to me, okay, for therapy. The father would keep getting angry at the daughter. His father had anger management issues. He kept getting angry at the daughter for every small thing, would name call, really cuss the daughter sometimes, sometimes project his insecurities on her, start controlling her life. No, you should do this, don't do this, don't wear this, things like that. So that was the situation at home. Then the mother would take the father's side to kind of keep the peace in the house and say, yes, yes, you're right, and tell the daughter, please be understanding. We don't want to get the anger to become worse. So the mother would take the
Mm.
father's side. Now, this daughter grew up, went to university, And these are the range of symptoms that she experienced, okay? She had low self esteem because she believed that she was not a good enough or worthy person. She had disturbed sleep, couldn't sleep well, kept getting nightmares, kept seeing things in her sleep, anger issues of her own. Anytime something small happened or she made a mistake, she would get angry.
Yeah.
It affected her relationship, not only with herself, but with her friends. Right? She would always distance herself from her friends, isolate herself. Otherwise, she would project her anger or lash out at her friends. She would feel guilty for every small thing she did. She'd feel guilty. She was like, she's the one who's wrong. I'm wrong. My parents had a problem with me because I'm wrong. I'm not worthy. You say these things to yourself.
Yeah.
She experienced panic attacks all the time, especially when her parents wouldn't talk to her. She would experience panic attacks. And then she would feel suffocated because every decision, everything she did in her life was controlled by her parents. Right? So you have this person coming to you with all these symptoms, and they're all symptoms of generational trauma.
My God, can't believe this.
Right?
So much to like. It's if you look at it, from like one person's viewpoint, like one human being, carrying all this baggage, having
Yeah.
to live your life. It's very difficult.
Because you've come then after all these things have gone wrong.
Yeah.
To reverse things is hard. It's possible. You can definitely heal. Yes, I've seen it happening. But it's harder to heal than it is to prevent these things. You
Right.
see? But that's just a case of abuse and anger. I also want to present a case study of neglect. Okay?
Okay.
So there was a mother who would always neglect her child, her daughter, in favor of other people. So other people's needs or the mother's own needs were more important than the child's needs. So sometimes the child would feel ignored or neglected. Okay?
Okay.
So the daughter would grow up with this deep self-hate, self-blame. So that's what she came to me with. She was like self-hate, didn't like who she was. She thought there was something lacking in her. That's why her mom neglected her. That's why her mom dismissed her. Right?
Yeah. But
Um,
was it like her mother like a working woman or something? Like
yeah,
what
so
was the
she was a
reason?
single mother. She was a single
Okay,
mother,
she was
and
single mother. Okay.
yeah. So she
Hmm.
she had a lot of responsibilities as well, and
Responsibilities. Right.
oftentimes she would just dismiss the daughter and because she was like mature enough, I guess, or she
Yeah.
grew up being, there's some children that grow up being very mature, right? They
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
after themselves, they're very independent. So the mom thought, yeah, she'll be fine, but
Yeah.
emotionally she was not fine.
She was not
Right?
fine.
Emotionally, she didn't get that support. She had a lot of anger issues. She said, why me? Why am I doing something wrong? And then she
Hmm.
believed that she should be punished. So her mom
Oh.
wouldn't punish her, right? She didn't experience any punishment from her mom, but she believed that because she was neglected so much, she needed to punish herself. There was something wrong with
Right.
her. So she would
Yeah.
self harm, right?
Oh
And
God.
go into this cycle that if I don't punish myself, Allah will punish me.
Oh my God.
You see how it's so sad.
That's
She
very
had self-identity issues, and one more thing which I noticed is she had chronic pain. She would
Oh.
experience pain. So every other day, she wouldn't be able to get out of bed because of this self-hate, this self-blame that
Mm.
she carried for her. It was affecting her. So she got that conversion disorder. She would get chronic pain. It would affect her menses, so she would get irregular periods, you know,
Periods.
and and she didn't realize all of that was connected. That was all connected. So
Imagine
it's
you're just telling me about one, two cases, and I'm already so much taken aback, and I'm just overwhelmed. I don't know how do you really take it, and how to like imagine how many cases are there like this out there.
There's so many. There's so many. These are just two that I've picked out. There are some
Yeah,
cases that come with fewer symptoms. There are some cases that come with more symptoms. It depends what you've gone through. But I
yeah,
wanted to give an example of abuse, and I also wanted to give an example of neglect because these
yeah,
things, the child can really carry them,
yeah.
as they grow up. It's not in their best interest, and it's not even in the parents' best interests.
Definitely. Of course,
So
you know, I
it really needs to be
parents
a,
do try. It's like the parents, they do try their level best to provide for their children whatever they can, and whatever abilities they have, and whatever they're capable of. But it's true,
mm,
sometimes we do forget on these very important areas. The way you give the example of
yeah,
the neglect of the mother, like probably the mother didn't realize it, but then how much it
exactly.
impacted, yeah, her child over the years.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, I want to say in these case studies, we're not blaming anyone. Blaming is not going to help us. Just like we talked about in the blame game, we're not blaming anyone, but it's very, very important to know where the symptoms are coming from,
Coming
right?
from true, yeah.
And once you understand that, then you can repair that relationship, right? You can
Absolutely.
heal that relationship. Like if it's an issue with your mom, sit down, have that conversation,
Yes.
find that closure, that healing, so you can move on with your life. If it's a problem with
Mm.
your dad, you know, do the same thing. Like obviously in the case of abuse it's a bit more difficult, but if you go to a therapist, you go to someone who, is a professional, they can help you. They can help
Right.
you kind of deal with these situations and start
Yeah.
working on things that can facilitate healing.
Right. Right. So, are there any other tips to minimize generational trauma?
This is
You
my
mentioned about
favorite.
counseling and all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
my favorite topic. I have like a list here. I started writing it
okay.
down because I knew it was going to be so much. I have
Yeah.
I have about 6 tips over here. So inshallah, time permitting, let's go through a few of them.
Yes.
Um,
Why not?
the first one, which I think is the most important one, is prevention is better. Prevention is
Okay.
better than, having to heal. Again, I said it's possible to heal. It is. I have seen it happening with my own eyes, but it's difficult. It's you really have to put the effort in to heal, you
Hmm.
know. If prevention is possible and you have these tools available, you have the knowledge, then you can really help your child, prevent them from getting to that stage. So before conceiving a child, and this is my strong recommendation, is if you're a couple, you're thinking of conceiving a child, go for couples therapy or go for prenatal counseling. You have to. Unfortunately, we live in such a day and age where these issues are getting bigger and bigger,
Hmm.
right? And we have
Right.
to know our way around it. In the olden days, I guess the world was smaller, and it was easier, I guess. Somehow, there are a lot of studies to show that somehow things were easier before. But in the kind of world we live in today, it's not easy bringing up a child. It's not easy at all. Like, hats off to all the parents who do it, because it's not easy.
Yes.
But you have to
Even to
be,
bring up, I feel like even to upbring one child today is such a huge
yeah,
responsibility.
it's
It's not
very,
easy like it used to be in, back in the days, like people are having like 4 or 5 kids so normally, and the child is there, the children are like growing up on their own. But today, even one child responsibility, it takes a lot of time and effort, and right.
yeah, no, it does. It takes so much just to bring up one child. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm strongly recommending go for couples therapy. It won't be a long-term thing. Go for 2 or 3 sessions and ask all your questions about bringing a child into this world, what to expect, and also learn about each other's parenting styles. Okay, so if you're a husband and wife, you want a child, you need to know. You need to know, okay, what is your husband's parenting style? What is your parenting style? So you can understand then what happens if something goes wrong. You have an idea in your mind that this is how my husband will deal with it, this is how I will deal with it, right?
Right.
And then ask, what is the better way? What things do we need to improve on? These are so important. And also study about childhood development. You know,
Right.
90% of my cases are mothers and they come to me when their child turns 6 or 7. Okay.
Okay.
And they come to me with complaints. My child is having tantrums. My child is very scared. My child has, is unmanageable, is being very rude. What is going on? And I tell them, I
Yes.
tell each and every one of them, kind of like a tape recorder, I say the same thing. How old is your child? 6 or 7. Okay. Your child is going through something called theory of mind, right? And they've never
Okay.
heard of it. They've
Heard of
never
it.
heard,
Exactly. What is it?
right? So,
Yeah.
theory of mind is the age at which the child starts understanding what the brain is. They understand that I have something
Okay.
called a mind, and I can feel things in my mind. I can feel happy, sad, guilty, scared. So they start understanding those things. And they also understand that if I'm feeling this, then other people are also feeling it, right? And that
Right.
it like opens their brain up. They're like, oh my God. So if I feel scared, another person can feel scared. if if my mom has told me something and I got angry, that means if I tell somebody something, they can also get angry, right? So they're learning about these things. You have to really
Look at
appreciate
the way they're
children don't.
thinking.
Yeah,
Like we
children
wouldn't
don't
think
know
that
this.
they're thinking.
They're so, mashallah, they're so innocent, but they're learning
Yeah,
different
they're
patterns.
innocent. Exactly.
So between 6 and actually between 6 and 12, they. Hello? Sorry, I
Yes.
think I
I.
glitched a bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I was saying between the age of 6 and 10 and 6 to 12, children really start to understand these things. And that can be a very scary thing because your mind is opened. You start to see things that you may not have noticed before, right?
Right.
So I tell all these parents the same thing. They're experiencing something called theory of mind. I need you to understand that they're going to be scared and they're going to lash out in different ways. And you have to really support them at this age, right? And none
Okay.
of these parents know. And I can't even blame them. I can't even say like it's your fault because you didn't need to know in the past. No one needed to know this
Yeah.
information. But
Don't know.
nowadays you have to know this information. It's very
Right.
important. So you know how
Absolutely.
to deal with it when it happens. And
Yeah.
you can do that
Absolutely.
in prenatal counseling. So go for those sessions, okay? Make sure that you're going not alone with your husband because the father child relationship is really, really important. And that's my third point. Father child relationship, it cannot be replaced. It cannot be replaced. It is very important that your father and your child the father and the child build a relationship, okay?
Absolutely.
Because it can avoid a lot of things going forward. Now there's no time to talk about these things, but just trust me. It's very important. So make sure
Right.
you're facilitating that. Anytime if mothers get really busy. As a mother you get really busy. So
Very.
capitalize on those times. When you're busy, tell your husband it's your time with the child now, you know?
Right.
And make sure they're
Absolutely. Yes.
engaging, they build that relationship because it's so important. And then number 4, learn how to develop a secure attachment with your child. Now, this is also another psychological thing. Not many people have heard of it, but it's possible to build either a secure attachment or an insecure attachment with your child. And this is for both
Okay.
parents, by the way, not just one. Okay. So, your aim as a parent should be to have a secure attachment because that means that you're teaching the child how to have a healthy relationship, you're teaching them how to express themselves healthily, you're building trust and honesty and all these things, right? um, I just want to share this one example just to capture this point really clearly. I had a young girl who was referred to me once. Her sister got married, her older sister got married and moved country. And she started having panic attacks. She started feeling anxiety. She was besides herself. She was like, oh my God, what is happening? I need to be with my sister. My sister is leaving me. right? So there was a lot of fear going on, a lot of emotions. Um, she would force her parents to kind of either bring her sister back, home, or
Yeah.
go to where her sister was. So there was a constant
Right.
movement back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it got to a point where the parents were like, what do we do? Right? What do we do?
Yeah. Exactly.
So they thought it was a very complicated issue, but actually it was very simple. It was because her attachment with her mother was not strong. It was not a secure
Okay.
attachment. So she had a better attachment with her sister than her
Sister.
mother. You see? Because the
Right.
child will always get attached to someone. Always. That's
Someone.
just our
Very
nature.
true.
We're born like that, right? So she
Right.
got attached to her sister, and the attachment with the mom was weak. There was a lot of pain there. There was not a lot of emotional support with mom, so that kind of caused this child to go to the sister. and
Yeah.
and so once they started, repairing that relationship, if the mother and the child started repairing that relationship, then the sister would be able to live in her happy marriage, and this child would get the support and attachment that she needs. So it's very important to have a secure attachment, like very, very important.
Right. True. Thank you so much, Sister Sarah. Oh my God, I think we could have gone on forever with all these
Yeah.
case studies. And I mean, I'm loving this so much right now because I could relate with some of them from here and bit as well. I've seen, I've experienced personally as well. So I could, really resonate with a lot of things. And I can't, imagine that people actually go through these things and how hard it
Mm,
is for someone to carry it on.
it's
And
not.
I think there comes a point in life where you're like, okay, you know what? It's time to break this generational trauma cycle. I'm done and over with it.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we're seeing now with the upcoming generation, that's why, people are taking that new turn in their life cycle to make things better now for the coming generations. And so they want to avoid repeating those mistakes that happened in the past. And as you said, we're not blaming anybody. Of course,
Mm,
everybody did their part according to the generation, the way they were, raised, with whatever technology that they had during their time and everything. But as Imam Ali even says that, you move with your generation, you move with, your time. So, inshallah, we hope to get that tawfiq that, we can also instill those good values and moral lessons in our children and in the upcoming generation so that it's beneficial for them, for their generations to come, and for all of us, inshallah.
definitely.
So yes, I think the time for the program, we're coming towards the end. Again, if there are any questions, any case scenarios or case studies that you would like to ask Sister Sarah, or you would want to have appointments with her, please do reach out. You can reach out to her through our Lantern of Light page or through her personal page of Tsazesh. And I'm sure that she'll be glad to help out. And because these are very important topics, and we really need to be, educated on it, inshallah.
Mm.
Are there any final words, Sister Sarah, that you would like to share with us?
I think just in conclusion, I would like to say, generally, in any situation, um, positive emotion trumps negative emotion, always.
Okay.
So
Yes.
if you're in a situation where you want to say, instill fear in a child, or say, oh, if you do this, the police will come. We hear that so many times. The police
I
will
do that
come.
sometimes. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it is a
Yeah.
method of getting children to cooperate with you,
Yeah, exactly.
but positive emotion is always better. If you can say
Yes,
something
that's what
positively, if you can say
listen.
something constructive, then that will help build compassion and resilience in children.
True, very
It'll
true.
really help them. So instead of saying the police is coming, you can say it would be really, really nice and helpful if you could do this. Are you a nice
Yeah.
person? The child will say, yes, I'm a nice person. Okay, so do you want to help me and do this? Fine, I'll help you. things like that. So try and use positive words and positive emotions, and really play to the child's character, positive character
Right.
traits, and
Right.
that will really
Absolutely.
reinforce them. So that would be my best advice, is always go for the positive route, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Sister Sarah, for your precious time. And
And
it was a pleasure really having you with us.
alhamdulillah, it's always a good time. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope we have more programs in the future, inshallah.
Definitely, inshallah. We look forward to having more programs with you. And once again, I would like to urge all of our viewers to please make sure to tune in on today's program. Make sure to give us a thumbs up. Make sure to give us your feedbacks and comments in the comment section on our Lantern of Light Instagram page. Please make sure to keep sharing this content as much as possible. And with that, I would like to take your leave. Jazakumullahu khairan. This is Sakeena Habib signing off. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.